In this video, we are talking about 10 players that you must start in week 5 of fantasy football. But before we get into it, take a look at this graphic as it shows that just 9% of you who are watching my videos are actually subscribed. So if you could take a second, take a moment, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, I'd really appreciate it. At number 10, Sam Darnold. We're starting off maybe a bit bold to some, but how can you bench Darnold at this point, even in a tough matchup against the Jets? I mean, he's the quarterback 5 in fantasy points per game, along with 11 touchdown passes, which leads the league through the first 4 weeks, not counting Thursday night where Baker is now the leader, but Darnold hasn't played yet. He's third in yards per attempt, second in passer rating. We know the Jets have a good secondary with Sauce Gardner, but they also really haven't been tested that much this year. I mean, the quarterbacks that they've faced off so far this season, Brock Purdy, Will Levis, Jacoby Brissett, and Bo Nix. So you could say that Darnold is the hottest quarterback out of all those guys right now. He's playing the best football, even though I do really like Brock Purdy. You should be starting him this week in fantasy. But with 5 teams on bye, if Darnold is on your roster, I feel like you have to start him at this point, unless you have a top 5 option at the position somehow this week. But if not, like, Darnold is playing at an MVP level right now. It would not shock me at all if he threw for 3 touchdowns. Jordan Addison is playing really well now that he's back. So even if you argue that Sauce Gardner somehow locks up Justin Jefferson, which I don't think anyone can really lock up Jefferson, he still has a really good option in Addison. So maybe this is spicy. Maybe this is a bold take. I don't really think it is. Start Sam Darnold with confidence in week 5. At number 9, DJ Moore has been a massive disappointment so far this year. Wide receiver 33 in fantasy. He looked like a much better wide receiver when Justin Fields was under center, but that's just not the case anymore. I think Caleb Williams is going to figure it out. He's still a rookie. He's only played 4 games, but the play calling, the offensive scheme, Shane Waldron is not helping either player. But that can turn around, that can change, and I really do think that this is a blow-up game for Moore that we've all been waiting for. I mean, he did score his first touchdown last week with Williams. That was nice to see. And DJ is still seeing great volume as he's averaging 8.5 targets per game. And this contest also has sneaky shootout potential against Carolina, who has allowed the second most PPR points per game to outside wide receivers and has given up 23 fantasy points per game to the position. So I think the Bears offense gets going. I think Shane Waldron hopefully figures it out. And even if he doesn't, Caleb Williams is going to be looking for DJ Moore early and often in this one. And with the matchup being very favorable, I think DJ Moore finally has that big game, over 100 yards and a touchdown in week 5. At number 8, T. Higgins has been on the cusp of a massive breakout game, and I think we see it in week 5. 91% route participation in his first 2 games back, along with the higher target share and first read share than Jamar Chase. I mean, that's notable. I feel like historically when these two are on the field together, Chase dominates in both of those categories. So that's not nothing. I think that is notable. Higgins also leads the team in red zone targets over the last 2 games. I expect this game to be a high-scoring affair against the Baltimore Ravens. This Bengals offense has been absolutely cooking. Joe Burrow also looks extremely locked in. We know the Ravens, they're a good run defense, but they're allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. Higgins has also destroyed the Ravens in the past. I think he does it again this week. At number 7, Amari Cooper had an 82-yard touchdown negated by penalty on a ticky-tacky call, and we'd likely be talking about Amari in a much different light, but nonetheless, Cooper has less than 8 fantasy points in every game this season, outside of when he went absolutely crazy in week 3, and while Deshaun Watson has been very hard to trust, Amari is still seeing very nice volume. He's 6th in targets among wide receivers with 37 on the year, 46% air yard share, 30% first read share, tied for the team lead in red zone targets. The Browns need Amari Cooper. He is their passing game. Yes, Njoku is trending to play. He might potentially play. Even if he does, it's going to be the Amari show. The matchup is also way too good to pass up on against the Washington Commanders, who have given up the most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. So while Deshaun Watson doesn't look great, this offense as a whole has been very underwhelming. You have to take advantage of wide receivers that play against the Commanders. Get Cooper in your lineup even after a disappointing game, because it just feels like he's going to erupt in week 5 in a mouth-watering matchup. At number 6, Travis Etienne has been a product of a really bad Jacksonville Jaguars offense that has been down early in games, and they've just abandoned the run. Yes, Tank Bigsby has also looked really good. We don't love that, but Etienne suffered that shoulder injury early last week, and I think that kind of opened up the door for Tank. But Etienne hasn't received more than 13 carries in any game this season, nor has he eclipsed 90 total yards in any of his first 4 games. But with the Jaguars sitting at 0-4, changes need to be made. And Trevor Lawrence got that massive contract, does not look deserving of the money that he just received. If Jacksonville wants to win football games, put the ball in Travis Etienne's hands and take the ball out of Lawrence's hands. Yes, we like Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk. Those guys are great, but Etienne needs to see more work, not only in the running game, but in the passing game as well. That's where Etienne makes his money, especially when it comes to fantasy. And he's been pretty solid on the year, 20th in missed tackles forced per attempt and 16th in yards after contact per attempt. So it's been a volume thing. It's been on an offense that hasn't been in scoring position often. But this is the perfect spot for Travis to get it going against the Colts, who are allowing the 5th most rushing yards to running backs, along with the 157 scrimmage yards per game to the position. So I think Etienne has a big day on the ground, through the air. I think he scores a touchdown as well. At number 5, Brandon Aiyuk. Let's keep this trend going. Really good players who have started off the year slow. They've been really underperforming so far, but Aiyuk has been the perfect buy low candidate for the past 2 weeks now, and it will likely be impossible to trade for him after this Sunday. Right now, he's the wide receiver 67 in fantasy points per game. That's tough to see. He hasn't scored more than 10 fantasy points in any game this season. I'm just not concerned though. Like, looking at some of these advanced metrics, right now he's 3rd among wide receivers in average separation score, and he leads the 49ers in route participation at 88%, so we know he's getting open at a high rate, and the targets just haven't been there yet on a consistent basis, and that's all going to change this week. Aiyuk is tied for 5th among wide receivers in end zone targets, with 5, but has 0 touchdowns on the year. Expect Aiyuk to score this week against the beatable Arizona defense, who have allowed the 4th most PPR points per target to outside wide receivers. This is another game that I think is going to be high scoring. I think Aiyuk is going to be heavily involved early and often with a banged up George Kittle. Yes, Jordan Mason's going to be a big part, Deebo Samuel, but this is going to be that big Brandon Aiyuk game that we all have been desperately waiting for. At number 4, Kareem Hunt appears to be the guy in this Kansas City backfield, especially with rookie running back Carson Steele having fumbling issues. I think Steele's kind of coughed up his opportunity, unfortunately, and the Chiefs are going to go to what they know works, a familiar face in Hunt, and he played pretty well in week 4 for it being his first game in a long time. 85 total yards on 16 touches. Unfortunately, he's probably going to continue to lose pass down work to Samaje Perine, so that caps his overall upside. But on a Kansas City offense that just lost their star wide receiver in Rashee Rice, they don't have many other options on offense outside of Travis Kelce. So that's a good thing for Hunt. He's going to be involved early and often. They're probably going to lean on the run game at times against the Saints defense that's allowing 5.2 yards per carry to the position. So this is a game where Hunt probably is going to have 100 rushing yards, an easy 1-yard touchdown, a really good fantasy day. So you probably need a running back at this point because everyone does with the bye weeks, with the injuries. So I think Kareem is a very nice spot start in week 5. At number 3, Brian Thomas Jr., the talented rookie, has really started to heat up over the last 2 weeks. With 9 targets in back-to-back games. We love to see that, along with 14.5 fantasy points per game. Thomas is clearly the Jaguars' big play threat, downfield threat. He had a 33% target per route run rate in week 4. And so far this year, the Colts have not been able to defend the outside perimeter wide receivers, as they've been shredded by George Pickens, Nico Collins, and Rome Odunze this year. So Brian Thomas Jr. is the next guy up. This Colts secondary is also a pass funnel, allowing 653 yards and 4 touchdowns to wide receivers so far this season, along with the 5th most fantasy points to the position. So it's a really good matchup on a Jaguars offense that stinks. Defense stinks. They have to throw the ball in order to keep up, in order to win football games. And I'd be expecting another massive performance from the rookie in week 5. At number 2, Davien Wicks. Yes, we just talked about him in our breakout video, but he needs to be on this must-start list because he's going to go nuclear in week 5 with no Christian Watson. It doesn't look like Romeo Doubs is playing either. And we know when Wicks is on the football field, when he gets opportunities, he balls out. I hope you spent all of your fab to get him because he is looking like a league winner. In 3 career games where Wicks had 70% route participation or more, he is averaging 21 fantasy points per game according to Fantasy Life. That is incredible. That is elite. And even if we're throwing that out, I mean, Wicks was the wide receiver 3 in fantasy last week with a healthy Jordan Love. He led the team with 4 end zone targets. Yes, they were playing catch up against Minnesota. Yes, they were throwing a lot. But in week 5, the situation, the matchup just could not get any better against the Rams, who have allowed the most PPR points per target and 2nd most receiving yards per game to perimeter wide receivers. So the Packers are going to throw a lot in this one, and Wicks is going to be a big part of it. At number 1, Garrett Wilson, another guy who was on the breakout video, but we got to talk about him. Do not leave Garrett Wilson on your bench this week. That's going to be a massive mistake. All this chatter all week about Garrett Wilson, is he not good? He's not elite. Garrett Wilson coming out in interviews himself saying this offense is not doing a lot. It's boring. It's stale. These are the games where the player who has had all this drama surrounding them the week before, they typically tend to go off the next game, and that's what we're going to see with Wilson. And I'm so confident that Wilson is going to have a massive game. I'm taking the higher on his line right now, 52.5 receiving yards. Give me the over on Underdog, on their pick'em. If you're not playing Underdog pick'em, what are you doing? Sign up right now. Use the code ROC to get $100 in return. If you deposit $100, you can deposit $10 and you'll get $10 in return. But get on Underdog Pick'em. It just makes Sundays more fun. But I still think Wilson is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now. Yes, it's been a rough start for Wilson. Wide receiver 43 in fantasy points per game, but he's still seeing the volume, averaging 8.5 targets per game. Believe in Aaron Rodgers. Believe in the talent of Wilson. It's going to click. Buy low on Garrett Wilson now because he's going crazy in London. Yes, Minnesota has a good defense, but they've allowed the 4th most fantasy points to outside wide receivers and just got torched by Jordan Love for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. I don't care if the Packers were trying to catch up. They were throwing a ton. Minnesota was still allowing them to do that. So Garrett Wilson is going to remind people this week why you drafted him in the early 2nd round of your fantasy drafts. He's a talented player on an offense that's still trying to figure it out. He's still trying to build chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. He needs to be in your lineup because I think he's going to be one of the reasons why you win your matchup this week. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you took away anything from the video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video. It helps me out more than you know, and I will see you in the next one.